Hey, everybody, it is Mike, Junkwax Hero, and this is the first episode of the new podcast series, Meet a Content Creator. And I am introducing it with my first guest, Adam Gray, also known as the 27 guy. Is that right, Adam?
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes people say the real guy, 27, emphasis on real rather than on 27. But yeah, 27 is the lucky number, and that's what it comes from. The 27 guy on Twitter and the real 27 guy on Instagram and most other places.
And what does the username come from?
So 27 was my lucky number when I was growing up, and there's a couple of card related things that it has to do with that are both long stories. One, it resulted in the greatest pull in the card shop that I worked for in the 1990s and early 2000s, which was a Michael Jordan jersey autograph out of $100 box of cards that sold that week for $7,000,
Wow.
which back in 1999 was crazy. And then the other reason is after years of putting together the 86 87 set, I finally was able to buy a Michael Jordan 86 Fleer. It had a bunch of creases in it. I still have it to this day, and I paid $27 for it. So all
Wow.
of these things sort of happened. Those are the two big card related parts of the 27.
That's awesome. And that's, I have a couple of questions just from that, but I'm going to give you a chance to introduce yourself, who you are, because I have always seen you. I don't open Instagram much, but when I do, there you are. And I always have it on mute, not because of you, but just because that's the way I open Instagram. And it wasn't until I started seeing you on Twitter in the past year or so that I started really watching what you do. And I was like, man, this guy is good. I'm a big basketball guy, love basketball. And you do almost exclusively basketball cards, right?
As far as my collection, yeah, it is just exclusively basketball cards. But for what I did, you want me to talk about like a little bit about my myself, or was there anything else that you wanted to ask first?
Yeah, I'd love for you to just go through you as a content creator and a collector would be great.
Yeah, awesome. So, like a lot of people, I collected when I was a kid back in the late 80s and early 90s. And but unlike a lot of people, I never stopped collecting. And so I've just always collected cards and worked for a card shop for a number of years. And then paid for my college education through flipping cards back before we used the word flipping.
Wow.
Flipping was actually like this word that I think I heard years later. At least I'd never thought of it like that, but buying and selling and helping people move collections and things like that. So I paid for both of my degrees, which were in accounting, and then was able to put the large portion of the down payment on my house by selling my collection back in 2010. And then
Wow.
since then, I've just basically like been building my collection from an original investment of a couple $1,000s, and that leads me to the collection that I have today, which is just the best basketball card collection that I can put together, and it's sort of centered around just the history of basketball cards. I've got stuff from the 1930s. I've got a 48 Mikan, all the way, lots of stuff from the 70s, a lot of rare 90s inserts, all the way up until more modern. I don't really have anything from like the last 8 to 10 years in my collection. Not very many of those types of cards. But really throughout the history of basketball cards is what I've collected. And if I have a chance to ever acquire something that's like really what I would say is important or meaningful to the history of basketball cards, and I'm able to sell something else from my collection that I believe is less important, then I do that. So that's how I'm always like changing my collection. I don't have the good fortune of having a whole lot of money outside of my collection. So whenever I have to buy something, I have to sell something to do that. Um, but yeah, that's my history as a card collector. And then as far as content creator, I started the first basketball card podcast, affectionately called the Basketball Card Podcast. I started the magazine behind me that you can see called Basketball Card Fanatic, which a lot of people haven't heard of, but we had about 500 subscribers during our almost 5 year run. Printed the
Wow.
magazine and had a great experience with that. And that led me to really a full time content career, which started at PWCC. And then when PWCC changed and became Fanatics Collect, I had the chance to go out and to do it for others. And so now I make content for all sorts of different card companies. I love it. It's the best thing ever. I get to do awesome stories about cards that are at auction and other cool things that are exciting. And I try to always bring the collector's mindset, a mindset of like, why is this an interesting thing from the perspective of the collector? And where I think the community is like 90-10, they focus on price and 10% on everything else. I try to flip it. I'm sort of 90-10 the other direction. I want to think about all the other stuff and think about price just that 10% of the time. So I try to keep that short, but that's me in a nutshell.
No, that was great. And one of the things that I really admire about the videos that I watch of yours is the pacing. You have perfect pacing of, here's this item, here's why it's important, and here's the end. It's kind of the sandwich of a video, and you do it perfectly, probably because you've been doing it for so
Thank
long.
you.
And I just every time I watch you, I feel like it's almost like comfort food. It's going to be short, and I know exactly what the format is going to be, and you're going to nail it every time.
Well, thank you for saying that. I wish everybody liked them. I know that a lot of people are like, "Why is Adam's face on everything?" And I hear that. The reason I put my face on everything, by the way, might surprise people, but it's all about engagement. And when you look at a reel like where you're talking about a card, people might not want to see people's face every time. They may think that, but the data sort of suggests to us that people are more likely to watch if you're on there, and if it's your face and your voice and you're speaking more as a real person. But the real secret to it is it just take these things take forever. People see a 45-second video and they're like, oh, that probably took you like 15 minutes. And it's like, I wish that took me 15 minutes. It takes an incredible amount of time. I have reels that have taken me several days to make a 60-second video. And that's because of the research that's involved and all of the things. And so when I tell people my average reel gets about 40,000 views across the different channels, that sounds incredible. And I know that and I appreciate that. But it also, like, if they knew what went into it, they might not quite feel quite the way they do. They take a long time to get them right.
And is this a side gig for you, or are you full-time content creator?
No, I'm full time. I've been full time now for the last 2.5, or actually, if you include the year at PWCC, about three and a half years, I've been full time in this now.
Wow, that's fascinating. You had mentioned the card that you sold for $7,000 in the late 90s.
Oh, no, no, I didn't pull that. Somebody else in our
Oh,
shop pulled that. I
oh,
wish.
do you know what that card is worth now?
Oh yeah, I mean it's certainly a six-figure card. It's like
Yeah.
it's. I mean, I shouldn't say certainly. It's either really low or really high five figures, up into, depending on condition, it could be a couple $100,000 card.
That sounds right. Yeah. So you also mentioned the 86 Fleer Jordan.
Mhm.
What is Jordan's rookie card?
Well, I am a student of Beckett, and so when I had the chance to interview Dr. Beckett a few years ago, it's probably been 5 years ago now. I asked him the same question, and it was before things got really exciting with Star being graded by PSA and stuff. And I liked his answer because he talked about how it was important that the card was available to a lot of the world when it came out, that it was distributed in sort of a more normal way where everybody had a chance at it. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And 86 Fleer to me is the 86 Fleer Jordan is pretty clearly a top three most iconic card in the history of the hobby. It's easily the most iconic basketball card ever. So to me, it will always be the rookie card, but there is no way around the fact that the Star predates it. There's no way around the fact that it is NBA licensed. There's no way around the fact that it is older, that it comes first, that it is from a regular set that we sort of view as a mainstream set now. And we don't think about how they were distributed anymore. We don't. I mean, we can still see the unopened bag of Star. We can still see the unopened box of 86 Fleer that comes up for auction every couple of months. But to me, it's easy to just say they're both rookie cards, but that's sort of how I think about it.
I think that's very well said. It's all you covered all the things that the arguments are, and for me, it's just that the 86 Fleer looks so much better. It's infinitely better image, uh, and iconic too.
So here's my
But
question. Here's my question for you.
yeah,
There's two of them. You go to a card show. I don't know how often you go to card shows. I almost never go. I try to go to one a year. I go to the National every year. I'd like to
I
go
go
to
to
more, but
probably 5 a
things are
year, 4 or 5
five.
a year.
So they're both on a table. They're in similar condition. Which one, if you had the chance, which one would you want to get for your collection?
I think that if you are considering value and potential upside, it's got to be the Star. But for my collection, I would rather have the 86 Fleer.
So how's this for not how would I put this? Um, I have had that same 86 Fleer Jordan in my collection since I was 14 years old. So, and I'm 42 now. So we're talking about almost 30 years. I've never even owned a star before, but I love how much rarer it is. So
Sure.
today, which one would be more appealing? To me, it's the star by a long shot. But as soon as you said the 86 Flair is way better looking, my head started to nod because it's just not even close. It's such a good looking card. It's so iconic. It's so all of those things. But the rarity of the star speaks to me as I've gotten older in my collecting. And if I had to, I'm not like knocking down any doors to go get it because it's still a card that is in almost every major auction. But it's so much more rare. I'd probably steer myself to that at this stage of my collecting
Yeah.
journey.
So that brings me to the next question. As a basketball, I assume you're a basketball expert. You certainly know a lot about basketball. Who is the GOAT of basketball?
Oh, it's Jordan. It's not even a. I don't
Yes.
even like the conversations about LeBron are fun because of his longevity, but longevity does not make you. I mean, growing up, I was a huge fan of the Utah Jazz, right? And John Stockton has the most assists and steals ever, and Karl Malone for a long time had the second most points ever. But being around a long time and accumulating these great amounts of statistics over your career, they put you in the conversation, but they don't make you the greatest of all time. And that's about championships and about how much impact you had on the sport. And that's Jordan, and it's Jordan by a lot, by a
Yeah.
mile. I don't personally have LeBron as the number two player of all time either, and I'm not a LeBron hater. People would say that I am. I like LeBron in a lot of ways. I do, but he's not. I don't think he's. I don't. What do you think? What's your answer to that question?
It's Jordan, and it's not even close.
Okay.
And I have LeBron at 4 or 5.
Okay.
And I am a LeBron hater, but only because I'm a Celtics fan, and I'm
Uh,
legally required to hate LeBron as a
who are the
Celtics fan.
who are the other guys that you have ahead of him?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
Yeah.
Kobe, and
Okay.
Curry.
Oh, Steph. I like
Yeah.
that. That's really
Yeah,
good.
the impact on the game. Another thing that I think is underrated is the coolness factor of the athlete,
Mm.
and LeBron just doesn't have coolness that Steph Curry and Jordan has in spades. He is the coolest athlete of all time.
So here's a fun LeBron question for you. What was the coolest version of LeBron?
Wow. Do you mean which era?
Yeah.
I would say his second time in Cleveland.
Oh, cool. Because that championship is one of the all-time great championships.
The
And
chase
even
down block.
yeah,
Yeah.
they couldn't score at the end of that game, and he sure had a lot of chances. But the chase down block is an all-timer moment. I love his. It's kind of like when Hulk Hogan goes to the NWO with in WCW. I love it when LeBron becomes the bad guy after the decision. He goes to Miami. He wins two of his four championships there. He has the decision, and it's so bad, right? It's
Yeah.
such a bad moment, but like and he had some moments in there in Miami that were just so bad. He almost chokes away the opportunity at championship that the championship against the Heat, his second championship there. He almost loses it for him. Has a couple of terrible turnovers, but they win in the end. He was unbelievably elite as far as how athletic he was. But but I like your answer too because that Cavs championship was awesome, man. It was. Even if you don't like him, and I know you've
Right.
already proclaimed you're not a
Yes.
lover of him, like that was a great championship.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So when you're doing a video, it sounds like most of your videos are I don't know if most of them are, but are a lot of your videos hired out by like an auction house?
Yeah, most of them are. No, I would say probably, gosh, I should look at this. It's probably somewhere between 70 and 85% of them. I'm doing that content for the auction house. And for most of them, you either see them tagged in the reel or I'm collaborating with the auction house. Um, yeah, so the vast majority of them are, yes.
So what percentage of the requests you get from auction houses would you say you reject, and why do you reject those, if any?
So you mean like if they were to ask about like, hey, will you do this video on this specific card? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
so I get sponsorship requests
Mm,
frequently from companies that I would never do business with,
yes.
and I also get sponsorship requests on companies I would do business with that just doesn't interest me in doing the kinds of things that they want me to do.
Mhm.
And so I'm just kind of wondering if you have anything similar.
So with the auction houses, there are times where people will come to me and they'll say, "Hey, do you have a good story on this card?" And I think most cards, if you take the time, there's like a really great story out there. Again, they just take forever to produce and to think through. Um, so there are some times though where I'm like, this is really a bad thing. Like I don't, this is not gonna be good. Either because it is a card that I sort of feel like is being collected just because it's sort of something that where somebody's speculating on the player. Like they're just like, well, this card's cool because this guy is hot. That generally is not super appealing to me. Um, or there are times where people will have a card that I feel like has suspicious elements to it, where I'm
Mm,
like, I don't like that. I don't like how that feels. And in those situations, I'll just tell people no. Um, so that happens, but for the most part, I'll say this, like this is sort of like letting you see behind the curtain a little bit, but like for the most part, an auction comes out, and when the auction comes out, I look through the whole of the auction, and I'll give the auction house like a number of things where I'm like, these are great stories. And in a lot of cases, the auction house will be like, how do I say this? In a lot of cases, the auction house is like, Adam, just do whatever you think is great, right? Because I've done enough of this content for the auction houses that most of them are sort of like, we know that you do a good job and you have a good sense of which stories are the most interesting stories. And so, if I feel like there's a really good story out there, then I'll do it. But if there's something like where they're hoping that I'll do something and I don't like it, to get back to your question, I just tell them like, sorry, I'm not going to do that. And I haven't had anybody really. I've had a few places sort of like a couple times just be like, come on, we really need this. Like the client requested it, and it's a little bit awkward because sometimes the auction house has sort of said, yes, we'll have Adam do a video for you if you'll do this. And then sometimes I say, no, I'm not going to do that. So that's a little awkward, but those times have been very few. That doesn't usually happen.
interesting. Uh, Tell me about your magazine because I wasn't aware of it until probably 2 years ago, and I think by then it was long gone. You had ended it.
Actually, we only ended it about a year ago.
Okay.
So it was never. I would say this. It's like, so I've got a copy of it right here. I was looking up something earlier this week in this magazine. Um, it was it was definitely the greatest passion project I've ever had.
Yeah.
Um,
Love that.
we put so much time into this, knowing full well that in 2020 and after, that it was never going to be something that we were going to be able to sell for a lot of money, knowing that it was never going to be some massive revenue generator. It actually made pretty good money though. Like we had a number of sponsors, and like I said, like 500 paying subscribers is not like, I felt like it was tremendous success. And when we stopped, it was awesome. The reaction that we got from so many people, which was like, so many people were like, "Man, you guys put so much into that. Thank you for that." And then there were other people who were like, "Man, like I'm really gonna miss this. This became a really important part of how I, like how I conducted myself in the hobby." Because once a month, if you were paying $10 a month, you were getting a high quality 32 to 36 page magazine every month. Like we never missed a month, and it was well designed and the stories were awesome. And so I loved it, dude. I still miss it, but um I just got to the point where I had so many things that I was able to do, that like I had so many, and you know this, like being a dad and having the life that you have, like there's so many demands on your time. You don't always get to do everything that you want. And although I think BCF could still be productive, awesome, asset in our industry, we would spend dozens of hours putting this together, and then 500 people would see it. I can put together a reel in 5 or 6 hours, and 40,000 people see it. And that's sort of what it came down to in the end, is that felt like I could touch more, like I could influence more, and be seen by more and like educate more and all of those things that you're trying to do with the online content. I could just do so many of those things so much better than I could in a written way, which is sort of sad, but also sort of just the reality of it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you can look back and say, I did that. And I always tell my kids, you're never going to regret trying something, even if it doesn't work out the way you want it to, or after a long time you say, I need to move on to something else. But you may look back and say, I regret not doing that.
Yeah,
And that
that's
feels like one
true.
of those things.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Tell me about the book. You're writing a book, right?
Mhm. Yeah. So so starting with Basketball Card Fanatic, actually, I produced a really cool crowdsourcing project. And the idea was what episode or what issue was it? I think it was in issue 2 of Basketball Card Fanatic. I asked like 25 really big basketball collectors. I said, just tell me, what do you think I can't remember what the number was, but I think it was like the top 10 most iconic basketball cards are ever. And people came back with all these questions like, what does iconic mean for this? And I'm like, what does iconic mean for you? Whatever you think. And then
Love
I
that.
just left it open and said, rank them 1 through 10. And then the real magic is with the system, because if a card received a vote, then it received a certain number of points. And then depending on where it finished in the top 10, it received more or less points, right? And so everybody's like lists were so different. And then I just in Excel standardized all the lists, gave each card sort of an identifier, and then applied the numeric sort of settings that we applied at the beginning and said, what does this yield? And so another part of that, by the way, was a card had to show up on a certain number of lists to make the final list. So even if like a couple people put a card number 1 all time, if it wasn't on a certain percentage of the list, it just couldn't qualify. So that sort of prevented a small group of people from manipulating the final results. And so we were sort of aware of all of that sort of stuff. And as part of it, we came up with a list of like the 12 or 15 most iconic basketball cards of all time. And I looked at it and I was like, gosh, this is so interesting. And so then I did it another time for BCF. And then when I started at PWCC, I did the same thing for PWCC. I remember trying to convince my boss, Chris Callahan, of it. I was like, dude, this is going to be the coolest project ever. Like, we did this for BCF. Let's do it, but let's do it for the whole of the hobby. We didn't even limit it to sports cards. We did non-sports cards too, which I think was a mistake in retrospect, because it's hard to find voters that can opine in a really good way, in a really accurate way on both sports and non-sports. But we did it, and we interviewed or not interviewed. We sent the survey out to it was like 150 people, and it created this list called the Iconic 100 that we did for PWCC, and it was awesome, dude. Like the content that came out of it was so good. And so after I left PWCC, I was like, I want to take this same thing that I started back at BCF and let's do it again, but let's just do it for the first 25 years of the 2000s. And this time, based on all of the learnings from the other times, I said, let's do it in a way so that in the end, it's going to be like the very best version of this that we can. And part of those learnings, by the way, this is incredibly important. For the Iconic 100, it ended up being too basketball heavy. And I knew it did, because a lot of the experts had a basketball background. And so this time we said, no one who is an expert can just be a basketball expert. They have to have expertise in different things. And we have to ask not just my audience, but a bigger audience, a more diverse audience. And so I went on Sports Cards and Nonsense a couple times, and that's where a huge percentage of our voters came from, was from Sports Cards and Nonsense. So we had both an expert pool made up of people who work in the industry, people who I know through all of my dealings in the industry, and not only people I know, but other people who people who worked on this with me, because GemRate and I partnered together on this. And so we had this expert pool of about 40 experts, and then we left it open to the community, and almost 460 community members filled it out. We took the 2 polls, and we said we'd do this in the beginning. We gave them each an equal weight. So the 40 over here did have a lot more impact than the 460, but kind of like the NBA All-Star game, you've got 2 different voting pools. And then we did the same thing where we applied the point values to it. And after we did that, it created a list, an averaged list of the 25 most iconic cards across the first 2000, or excuse me, across the all of the 2000s. And it was awesome, dude. Like the list that fell out was awesome. And then now, and I know there's a long description, but the purpose of the book is to sort of commemorate those 25 cards, commemorate all the cards that ended up on the survey, which came from various experts within each sport. So like there was a baseball group of experts who put together a list of 30 cards that went on the survey. So we didn't miss anything. No one's accusing us of, oh, you missed this card. No one's going to accuse us of that. Some people are going to question very much how people voted. But everything was on the survey, every card that you could possibly want. I think it was 100 and it was like 140 cards total that people had to vote for or vote from. And they went through and they ranked their top 25 using the software, the survey that we put together. And yeah, now it's like time to unveil that in book form. It's already been unveiled. If you look at my Instagram or my YouTube, you can find that. But yeah, I think people are going to really like it.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I'll definitely be buying one. The You reminded me of your iconic 100 list because a couple of years ago, just about 2 years ago now, I guess, I wanted to start up my own 100 most iconic sports cards of all time. And I Googled to see if anybody else had done that before. And sure enough, there's this PWCC list of
Yeah,
100. And I remember reading through it and thinking, there is so much basketball in here.
yeah.
And there's a lot of Kobe and LeBron in here. And I
Hmm.
thought, if I were to start my own list, it would be uh, all sports, and I would limit it to one card of each athlete. And so I did that,
Mm.
100 cards. Uh, and I have like track and field athletes in there. It's all over the place. No lacrosse. That was the one thing I couldn't find any cards of. But 100 most iconic cards of they. Plus, they also have to be attainable for under $5,000.
Oh, so yeah, you put some real cool filters on that.
Yeah,
What was your findings in the end? I'm super interested to hear this.
I haven't released the top 25 yet. I'm
Oh,
going
you
to
haven't.
start
Okay.
a weekly. I was doing them one at a time
Yeah.
for about 10 weeks. And I was like, this is crazy. And then I
Yeah.
started doing them in chunks of 5 to 10. And I'm down to top 25. I took a break for the summer and I haven't gotten back to it yet. But yeah, you've got, I'm heavy on vintage,
Yeah.
of course, but then you've got the 89 Griffey Upper Deck
Yeah.
is really high in the list.
I had that when I filled out my survey for the Iconic 100. I had the Griffey number 4, and I still feel like it's number 4. But the community, if I remember right, I could just look at the book because we did a book for that too. I think the community had it number 9 and or number 10. I just think maybe it was even like 7 or 8. Either way, that's too low. The 89 Griffey to me is it's a higher card than that. I'll
I,
tell you,
my,
I'll tell you as well. I'll tell you as well. Then now this is going to break your list, but number 1 was the Mantle 52. Um, Number 2 was the 86 Fleer Jordan, which again I just think is too high. I think that card's number 3. And then number 3 was the Wagner. I think that the T206 Wagner is the most iconic card ever made. I do. That's what I think. But again, that's not how the voters voted, and that's how we set it up.
I would probably have it if I had the same, well, the lack of restrictions that I have. I would probably go Mantle and then Wagner.
Okay.
I have on my list. I have Griffey at number 6. Spoiler alert for anybody
Oh,
watching
do you
this.
have the Gretzky ahead of it? I'll bet.
The Gretzky is number 4.
Yeah, yeah. And then
Yeah,
is your number? Let me see. Is your number 5? Goodness, who would you have number 5? It's not. It's not the Ruth. No, it's not the Ruth because it's under 5 grand.
no, there is a Ruth. So remember, I created this 2 years ago. The Ruth may
Oh,
have outpriced this now, along with my number 1, which is the 48, 49 Leaf Jackie Robinson. At the
oh,
time, those were both borderline, and I think they may have outpriced this. I'll have to check
yeah,
before I do those.
yeah. That's
But
true.
then but then I'm just gonna choose different cards for both of those guys because what I'm trying to do is take the most iconic athletes of all time
Yes,
and do the best cards I can get for
yes.
under $5,000.
It's awesome. I
And
love that.
Jackie has to be number 1, followed by Ruth, spoiling things here, Ruth, and then Jordan, Gretzky, Mantle, and then I've got Griffey. Like I've got uh,
What mantle are you gonna have?
53 tops.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's probably my next big purchase, and I'm a low budget guy. Like the most I've ever spent on a card is $1,100.
That's great, dude.
So,
That's awesome.
yeah, and that was my 41 play ball Ted Williams. But
Mm.
yeah, the
I
the
used to have
mantle
a. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
the mantle's probably my next big purchase, maybe this fall.
I used to have a rule. I sort of like laugh about it now, but I used to have a rule that I shouldn't spend over $100 on a card. And
Yeah.
then at some point, I extended it to like I'll never spend more than $1,000. And then I remember when I broke my $3,000 rule was when I bought my autographed copy of my '61 Fleer Will Chamberlain. Um, and then I've like I don't even want to tell you what I've spent on cards at this point. So I said this to somebody the other day and he balked at it. He disagreed with me, but I've always felt this way. The more you spend on cards does not correlate with the joy that you get from being a card collector at all in any
Right.
way. And I think people sort of like they look at how I collect and they're like, well, you probably think that like that like you have like this elitist view of I don't at all in any way. I don't have like any sort of view that like you have to be buying like some of my best friends in the hobby are guys that have never spent even $100 on cards. And that's the greatest part about our hobby. I always say this is like one of my favorite sayings. It doesn't matter whether you have $1 million a week budget or $1 a week budget. It's the best hobby out there. And I know that people disagree with that, but put together a set, go work on a set that's like a really tough set and learn about the history of the set, learn about the history of the players, and put together a set that's 100 cards and costs you $50 total. It can be the most fun that you ever have. And I know other people disagree with that, but I really feel strongly that that's true.
Yeah. Agreed. That's very well said. So we've talked about the Jordan, which is probably the most iconic basketball card. But what's the Grail card, in your opinion? And you've already mentioned it. In my opinion, you've mentioned what I think is the Grail card for basketball,
For like all of basketball.
all time NBA.
Well, it's interesting. So I historically have said that the '97 game jersey autograph of Michael Jordan, number 23, is the card that I would want more than any other basketball card. Um, but I don't know if I don't know if I still feel that's true. I mean, I still feel like it's probably true for me. But when you say Grail, you might be talking about what other people think. I think what that card represents for its era, the way that the hobby changed at that point, the fact that it was the first game jersey, NBA licensed game jersey set, and then it was autographed. I think that's the greatest basketball card ever made. That's what I think. But what I'm really interested to hear which card you're thinking about right now.
The Mikan.
Oh, the Mikan. Yeah, I love the
Yeah.
Mikan. I love it.
I love the 97 Jordan too. Jordan was my guy as a kid. The Celtics were not good. I don't remember the Celtics being good in the 80s because I was too young. And by the time I was really a fan, Bird was laying on his back on the sidelines
Yeah.
and Jordan was up and coming. I went to Bowdoin basketball camp 6 straight years, Bowdoin College, which is near where I live and where I grew up. And the breaks that we would take, we would go into a film room and just watch Jordan highlights.
Yeah.
45-minute break, go watch Jordan highlights, and that was the best. And the Mikan is such a great card, and he was an underrated athlete because most people our age and younger have never heard of George Mikan. When I was a
Right.
kid, I was doing the Mikan drill at basketball camp all the time. Yes, Mikan drill. I loved the Mikan drill, but I didn't know who George Mikan was until I was a little bit older, probably teenager to maybe even college. So yeah, that brings me to my next question because I have beef with you.
Oh,
I was at the National, and somebody said, "Oh, Adam Gray is over there. He's taller than you." And I was like, "No, he cannot possibly be taller than me." I'm offended by this because I'm 6'2". There aren't very many people who are taller than me. And I turn around, and sure enough, you're like 4 inches taller than I expected you to be, at least, maybe even 6 inches. How tall are you?
I'm not that tall. It's over. I am 6'4".
Yeah.
So I am definitely tall. Most people, I bet you've had this experience too, where people assume because you're nice that you're going to be short. I don't know why people have this assumption. I think everybody's like, oh yeah, Adam's a really nice person. He's probably a really short guy. And every time I meet somebody in person who hasn't seen me before, they're like, what? I had no idea. And I'm like, why do you think I'm going to be a short guy? So anyway, but yeah, so you're 6'2" though, but you're like a post basketball player, right? Like,
Well, I wasn't until I was 30.
okay,
And so when I was a kid, I was a shooting guard. I just shot, 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 shot.
got it.
I was a point guard, and then became a shooting guard. And I was short until I was 11th grade or 12th grade. And then I got to be 6'2" pretty quickly over the course of a handful of months when I was like 17-ish years old. Then I went to college and I played. I didn't play on the team in college, but I played with the team a lot, played in a lot of intramurals. And I was always, 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 always around basketball players. And always felt like I was short, even when I was 6'2" in college, because I was always with much taller basketball players. And it wasn't until I got into corporate America at the age of 23 that I started looking around. Like I'd be walking down the hall and there were hundreds of people walking by. And I'm like, I'm tall. I had no idea I was tall.
It's funny. I still have those moments. I had one last night. I was at my kids in like this technology association thing at school, and I was there just with like there's a bunch of kids, but there's a bunch of parents too, and I just sort of like I had this moment last night where I looked around, and I was like, I'm like way bigger than every other human in this place, and I wonder like. So I think some kids see me and they're scared because I'm a big guy, and I'm always like, "No, don't be scared of me. Like, you can't be scared of me. Be scared of anybody but me." I'm not a scary guy. Um, but yeah, that's fun. It's funny the way that you said that because a lot of tall people don't realize it until like they get older. They go, "Wait a second, I guess I'm big now. What happened?"
Yeah. Yeah, when you hang out with basketball players until you're 23 and then
Yeah,
you're all of a sudden around no basketball players, kind of
yeah.
makes you go, "Huh, I guess I am tall."
Hey, I gotta
But
I gotta ask you. I know we're getting away from it now, but I gotta ask you about the Mikan because you mentioned your $1,100 thing, and then you
yeah,
mentioned the Mikan. So there was a time not that long ago in the history of our card of the world of cardboard where you could buy a Mikan for under $1,100. It would just have to be pretty beat up. I think those days, last time I looked, I think those days are probably gone now. At this point, if it's a real Mikan, it's probably going to cost you more than that. Um, is that an aspiration at some point, that card, or is that like, or why would, and if it is, like, why would it be? What is it about the Mikan that makes you go, oh, I love that card?
that's a really good question. First of all, the colors,
Yeah,
the deep blue,
the blue.
and the history of the card, and the history of him with the championships on the Lakers before they moved. Just I don't know. It's a fantastic card. I love it.
How much of it
Um,
has to do with I'm picking up a Beckett right now. How much does it have to do with the fact that in the beginning of all of the gray pages when we were a kid, you would get this card. So here it is. 1948 Bowman card number 69, George Mikan rookie, 3,000 low, 4,500 high. How much of like it's like how much we know it has to do with how it was priced as we were growing up and the fact that most of us never saw it when we were a kid.
0
Oh,
because
really?
you
Okay.
can see I've got Beckett, the first Beckett basketball behind
Mhm.
me, and the first Beckett baseball, both autographed by Dr. Beckett here. I was a Beckett kid, grew up in the '80s. Started reading Beckett Baseball Card Monthly in the I don't know maybe '87, '88,
Okay.
and then started reading Beckett basketball around 1990. But I had zero interest in vintage basketball cards.
Okay.
1989 and later was all I was interested in because I started collecting basketball in '89, hoops, uh, Fleer, and so I would never look at the vintage cards in Beckett basketball card. I looked at some vintage and Beckett baseball, but had no interest in those either. I always wanted to look up the 52 mantle
Okay.
mostly every month.
I I loved the Mikan almost exclusively for that reason. So it's interesting that we come at it from a different perspective. And then I interrupted myself. Do you think you'll ever try to get one?
It depends on. I'm a big eye appeal guy. I love like a PSA 1.5 or an
Yeah.
SGC 1.5 with good eye appeal. But I don't know what you're looking at. But are they 10,000 for low grade now?
I think so. I have one that's very low grade. I actually probably have the copy that I don't. I'm not trying to sell you on it. I'm not going to sell the card to be clear, but mine is as clean of a 1948 Bowman that you'll ever see. It is gorgeous. Centering's fantastic. It looks amazing, but on one of the corners, it curves just a little bit in a way that PSA has deemed to be trimmed. Now, I've had other people look at it to say, I don't believe that it's trimmed, but PSA believes it's trimmed, and that's what matters to the value in a lot of these cases. The other thing that PSA picked up on is that it's missing one of the colors. I think it says no red ink, which I didn't notice. I don't.
Hmm.
Part of that might be that I'm colorblind, but I don't think so. I think it's just not very a noticeable thing. Um, and so the card, I'll send you an image right when the episode's over. The card just looks exactly like I think you want it to look at, like you want it to look. But I don't think it's worth. I mean, it's still a very valuable card, right? I think it's like $4,000 or $5,000, and to me, that just is such a good buy in
Yeah.
this world. To have that important of a basketball card that's as rare as it is, that looks as good as it does, and because it says altered on it, it's and because it's missing the color or whatever, it's valued at something so low. I think that's insane, but everybody has different feelings on these things.
Yeah. The Mikan ended up at number 19 on my list. So
Mhm.
at the time when I started this 2 years ago, it was definitely under $5,000. It was attainable.
And you
Which,
might, I think you'll still get one at some point for under 5 grand. I think, but it's not going to be a PSA 6, right? It's not
no,
going to be
no.
a PSA 2 even probably. Um, it's going to be an altered copy or a copy that's really beat up.
Yeah. And to get back to seeing you at the National, I wasn't avoiding you. I actually planned on going and introducing myself because we haven't met in person, in case anybody listening is wondering. Uh, but you were talking to somebody, and I went back to having my conversation. When I turned back, you were gone. And
Oh.
I was like, well, I'm sure I'll see him again, but I didn't.
Next, are you going next year?
Yes.
I That's the one I always try to go to. The national for me is I don't know what it's like for you. I think some people are there exclusively for the cards. The cards to me are like very much like a secondary thing. It's all about meeting
Friends.
people, and
Yes.
yeah, and I remember. So it's funny because everybody's different, right? I've already mentioned Dr. Beckett a couple of times on this episode, but um, I went one year to the national like with my main goal being to find him because I look up to him so much. He is largely responsible for a lot of this, and I don't think he gets the love that he deserves. And I think he's just so measured and his approach to so many things. He's the goat. And it's not close, right? When people say this person or that person are like the greatest collectors, the greatest people in the hobby ever, Jim Beckett is, in just my opinion, my 2 cents. I think he's number one by a mile.
I could not agree more.
And so I wanted to see him so bad. I didn't see him all year. And I even messaged like a few people like, hey, can you help me find Dr. Beckett? But then was it 2 years ago? I just walked past a place with dollar boxes, and I had people tell me that he would be there, like at dollar boxes. And so I saw him, and I just like stopped and I was like, Jim. And he looked up and he saw me, and it was like one of the great moments of my life. And I mean that like outside of like the birth of my kids and like family stuff. Dr. Beckett looks at me, like he smiles real big and he goes, Adam Gray. And he shakes my hand, and I was like, oh man, this is
That's
it.
amazing.
This is it. And I know he's like super personable, and he would do that to a lot of people. I'm not saying anything special about myself, but like he is the greatest, and he still loves the dollar box stuff. I know
Yeah.
how he loves using like ComC and like moving stuff. He's always like, oh, I'm just trying to sell stuff, but he loves buying stuff too. He just loves the cards, and so please don't say that, or don't think that I'm just saying like it's just all about the people. It is about the cards too. There is this element that's great, but at national, I feel like it really is about seeing. For me, it's more about seeing people than it is, about trying to find cards, because cards are always available. But seeing you in person would be way more interesting to me than like going around and looking to try to find something for my collection. I think that's probably not going to be as fruitful for me as just talking to people.
Yeah, my best experience at the National was actually walking around with Greg from Midlife Cards, who's actually a co-owner of this podcasting network. Um, and we just spent like an hour trying to find a 1961 Fleer basketball card wrapper that I had seen the
Oh,
day before, and I was like, I got to go find that. And he's like, "I'll go help you." And we spent an hour and a half trying to find it, and that was the best experience at the National this year for me. It was so much fun.
Did you find it?
No, but then I ended up going out and buying one
What
after
did
anyway.
what did that cost you?
110,
That's
$120.
that's a great buy. I
Yeah.
um on that same note, I think it was Robert Edwards had they're not Robert Edwards anymore. They're REA Collects or Collect REA. I always forget. But they had a 48 Bowman wrapper
Mm.
like a couple years ago at auction. And when I saw it, I went, I've never seen one of these before. Like this is really rare. And it sold for, I think it sold for like $5,100.
Oof.
And I remember going and I put one of my like one I always try to do these like thought provoking questions on my Instagram and I think if this is a good question to me, I think it'll be a good question to the community. And I put one up that was like, what would you rather have, the wrapper or a Mikan? And it's actually a really great question because everybody's like, well, I'd rather have the Mikan until you realize like the Mikan's a rare card, but that wrapper, you may never get another chance at it. And
Yeah,
so who
it's a
knew
good
that in
question.
1948, it wasn't just getting the right card. The best thing that you possibly could have kept out of that pack was the wrapper itself.
Yeah. That felt like one of your videos right there. It might be the
Well,
perfect way to wrap this up.
maybe it is. I would just say, like, everything that I do is like, I mean, hopefully you can feel it. Like, it's all from the perspective of like I've collected I'm 42. I've collected since I was like a little kid. My first memories are being a collector, right? And so if I find something is interesting in collecting, I always just sort of say, I wonder if other people will find this interesting too. And for the most part, if you think something's interesting in collecting, I think other people are going to find that it's interesting as well. So I really appreciate you giving me a sec to talk about things, including like the book. That was really kind of you to ask about that. I know not a lot of people are thinking about it, um, but yeah, thank you and because you plugged it on your channel, send me your address afterwards. We'll send you a free copy.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Uh, where can people find you and your book?
Instagram, the real 27 guy, Twitter, the 27 guy. And yeah, if you follow me on my Instagram, you're going to see links to buy the book. The book is not currently available for purchase, but it probably will. When does this episode go up?
It'll probably be the podcast on Monday,
Okay.
I think, and then Wednesday on YouTube.
So shortly after this comes out, like in the next week after this comes out, it'll be available for sale.
Great. Awesome. Adam, this was fantastic. I could talk for hours about this stuff, but we both have hard end times. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Mike. It was really a lot of fun.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching and listening.